police very clearly ushered these the trucks into the city, and then sort of didn't let them leave when the time came to sort of get everybody out, despite the fact that, Barber seemingly exhibited, an intent to have the trucks leave the downtown and residential areas. Chris Barber first expressed his intention. He said, look, we're ready to move. We're ready to get the trucks out of the area. It's February 15th. Let's, what do we have to do? Let's work together. What do we have to do to get these trucks out of the area? Nicole Bates responds, well, that was a one-day deal, and that expired yesterday.
Robert Krajcik reporting here in Ottawa, Ontario for Rebel News. After the 21st day of the Tamara Lich and Chris Barber trial has come to an end. The 5th week of this trial just concluded. Both co-defendants are being charged with a series of crimes linked to their roles as organizers with the 2022 Freedom Convoy, a peaceful demonstration here in downtown Ottawa and in front of Parliament Hill that was opposed to what I describe as the COVID-19 enterprise, this series of measures of control and censorship and coercion and mandates and edicts and decrees ostensibly serving the interest of public health according to the government. Since I'm only a layperson, a regular bro, I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Adam. He is a lawyer with the Democracy Fund, and he's going to join us, and he's going to share with us some of his legal pedigree expertise to give us deeper insights into what's going on thus far in this trial. Before we get into that, I just want to remind you folks that we need your support to continue delivering this on-the-ground, in-the-field reporting that we hope you enjoy and appreciate. To stay up to date with our coverage, please visit tamaratrial.com. So Adam, we've got this ongoing disclosure issue going on. We've got Diane Magus leaving these details, or sharing these details, I should say, about these portions of emails from the PLT that were redacted. She wants them unredacted. We've got challenges from the prosecution saying they don't want to do the full disclosure on these emails for different reasons. You mentioned to me solicitor-client privilege. We heard executive privilege come up. Can you walk our audience through what's going on here? What's the contest? What's the deal?
So, yeah, we've had 2 documents now provided in disclosure as of late this afternoon. The first document was a 5 pages of blacked out completely sheets, fully redacted. There's nothing that can be gleaned from these sheets. The second document...
Were these PLT emails?
We don't know. We don't know. They came as, just to give a bit of background there, they came as a result of a disclosure request that Magus and Greenspan, the defense team, put to the Crown as a result of Perkins McVeigh's and what came out in the testimony of Officer Bates, whereby her phone was wiped. Magus made a disclosure request, which was essentially, we want to know what the basis for the wiping of these phones were. There was some discussion about a software update. Magus wanted the details of this software update and sort of what precipitated these PLT phones being wiped. Because if you recall, there's not just this officer who had her phone wiped. There was the previous officer, the PLT officer, Officer Sear, who also had her phone wiped. So these 2 documents are in relation to that disclosure request. The first document, the one I mentioned with 5 blank pages, we don't know how that relates because it's 5 fully redacted pages. The second document is a document that outlines a number of email threads between various parties within police departments and some Crown attorneys. Now, these email chains, interestingly, were all in their subject line titled PLT disclosure. And as you pointed out, the Crown has claimed privilege on a number of these redactions. So the second, just to clarify, the second disclosure document was not fully redacted. It was redacted in part. We don't know exactly how much of it was redacted, but a substantial amount we can infer. The Crown has editorialized the redactions and stated, in some instances, solicitor-client privilege. In some instances, they're not disclosing it on the basis of relevance. They're claiming that it is irrelevant. So now the question is, will these documents be produced unredacted, or will they sort of remain fully redacted, and will we be proceeding with Baitch's testimony without the benefit of knowing what these documents are?
So you mentioned solicitor privilege and also claims of irrelevance as justifications provided by the prosecution to explain why these documents are being redacted at whole or in part. So let's go through those one by one. In terms of the claim of irrelevance, if the Crown says these documents that are being sought are relevant, and the defense contests that, is it always the judge that makes the determination at the end of the day? Are all judges in a situation like this then made privy to those documents, fully redacted, fully disclosed, and then says, well, it is relevant or it's not relevant?
Well, yeah, so it'll have to put the judge in a position to, as the trier of fact, to make a decision on these documents. She can't effectively say one way or the other if she's looking at 5 blacked out pages or heavily redacted emails, whether this is relevant or not in her opinion. I should add something else about that first document. Now, both of them are, Perkins McVeigh made it clear that these are 2 separate issues, because for the first set of documents, the Crown has stated that this is subject to a third-party record. The second set of documents, the Crown has stated, solicitor-client privilege. So basically, what that means is the third-party record is such that the defense now has to make a third-party records application. Right, so they have to apply to have the source material provided to them from the party that it originated with. The Crown is saying that this did not originate as the fruits of the investigation, as a part of the fruits of the investigation. So the defense is going to have to then make an application showing that, okay, we want this, irrespective of whether this is part of the fruits of the investigation, because it's relevant, and we will seek that from the third party. We do know that the Crown has seen the unredacted version, an unredacted copy of that first document that a third party record will be sought. The second one is part of the fruits of the investigation, and the question is, who is the appropriate party that this information is to be sought from, and how do they go about doing that? I mean, defense must have more than we have. Sitting in the audience here, the defense must have more, such that they can at least then make a third-party records request from an entity. We just don't know what that entity is.
Come on out November 25th. It's all aboard the Freedom Train in Niagara-on-the-Lake. You can check Rebel News for updates and also the Freedom Passport site.
Tamara Lich, who led the Truckers Convoy, will be sharing the stage with some of the finest international recording artists, like the Chops Horns from New York City, who's played with Alicia Keys, Stevie Wonder, the Rolling Stones, and many more. Plus New World Sun, just off a European tour, and the legendary R&B master, Leroy Emanuel. Get on the Freedom Train with Tamara Lich. Saturday, November 25th at Niagara-on-the-Lake Central Community Center, 680 York Road. Get your tickets today at freedompassport.ca. The Freedom Train is coming. Know your rights. Know your freedoms.
Okay, now let's talk about the witnesses that we've seen the past little while, maybe even going back to the last week. So basically, it was a slate of Ottawa residents testifying to harms they say befell them as a function of the Freedom Convoy, the demonstrators and protesters themselves. We had that business owner with the upscale ladies' clothing store. We had the civil servant, the government worker who was talking about how he cried because he couldn't sleep. We had Zexi Lee, who I described as the celebrity activist witness. Any of these witnesses stand out to you? Any themes that you noticed in the way they were testifying? What's important from what you saw from those testimonies?
I guess, from a bird's eye view, what's important from these testimonies that we've seen is that nothing is specific that any of these witnesses have described that relates directly to any of the elements of the offense and can be connected to Chris Barber or Tamara Lich directly. I mean, it's a lot of sort of feelings-based testimony, and it just... Whether that, what is the weight of that is the question. Is this going to be something that is in Perkins McVeigh's mind? it doesn't, from my perspective, it doesn't look like there is going to be a lot of weight attributed to the civilian witnesses. But I think you're talking about sort of takeaways from the week. I think what we did see with Sear, who was the PLT officer yesterday or the day before, Isabel Sear, was that Chris Barber. And this is the first time, by the way, that we've really had sort of Chris Barber's name mentioned in any real way.
Yes.
Tamara Lich, we're still kind of waiting on at this point, whether her name is going to come up in any meaningful way. But what was revealed there is sort of what I took away from this is that there is a compliance, right? So PLT officers are working with Chris Barber, and he seems to be, and so do the protesters, largely compliant. And this can be seen through the emergency lanes that were left open. I think the only street that did not have emergency lanes left open, according to police liaison teams, was Kent Street. But aside from that, there was traffic flow in all of the other streets. There were staging areas. The police assisted the convoy. This is the other thing. The police sort of assisted the convoy, not in a passive sense, but hey, come over here. We're directing you to the baseball stadium. That was one. Rideau Street was another one where. But it was also sort of haphazard. They said, okay, you can park on Rideau, but there wasn't any specification as to how many trucks were permitted to park on Rideau, and whether there was going to be spillover, where those trucks would go. But at the end of the day, it's police very clearly, these are Crown witnesses, and this came in an examination in chief from the Crown, police very clearly ushered these, the trucks into the city, and then sort of didn't, from what I've seen, didn't let them leave when the time came to sort of get everybody out, despite the fact that Barber seemingly exhibited an intent to have the trucks leave the downtown and residential areas.
Yeah, just to echo what Adam was saying, a lot of the information being shared by Isabel Sear when she was testifying about her communications with Chris Barber. I think the same is also true from the witness who was meant to be testifying today, Nicole Bache, another police liaison team officer with the Ottawa Police Service. They were testifying about communications they had with Barber, texts, direct messages, and what you're seeing is Chris Barber asking, how can we do this? How can we do that? In order to make the Ottawa Police Service's jobs, their mission to maintain public safety, easier. So it really showed, as you put it, compliance. So one last thing that I want to talk to you about is this recurring theme of Ottawa police officers saying that they had no discretion to negotiate with the Freedom Convoy organizers, in this case Chris Barber, to consolidate, to reduce the footprint of the vehicles involved in the Freedom Convoy, to reduce the sort of negative impacts that would befall people in downtown Ottawa as a result of these parked trucks and other vehicles. So we saw that in the first week with Russell Lucas. He's like this bureaucrat, Ottawa Police Service guy. He's sort of the top police liaison team guy. His title was Incident Commander. He said he was told not 1 inch should be conceded to the Freedom Convoy, which translated to him not being allowed to negotiate anything to reposition vehicles, again, to reduce the physical footprint of vehicles in downtown Ottawa. Now, Adam, you were here for this week, and we saw two police officers, two PLT officers, testify to that. They said they were not permitted to make arrangements, to negotiate, to deal with the Freedom Convoy to reduce their footprint. And you mentioned this communication that Nicole Bache was testifying to, I think, yesterday.
That's right, yeah. So it was in a text message conversation between Chris Barber and Nicole Bache, where she told Chris Barber first expressed his intention. He said, look, we're ready to move. We're ready to get the trucks out of the area. It's February 15th. Let's, what do we have to do? Let's work together. What do we have to do to get these trucks out of the area? Nicole Bache responds, well, that was a one-day deal, and that expired yesterday. So now there will be, essentially the implication there was that there will be no trucks moving out of the area, at least in congruence with this original plan.
So I'll just wrap up with a little bit of speculation, because I know Adam doesn't want to speculate because he's got his work uniform on. The question is, from where did that order originate? How high up the chain of command, the food chain of power, did the command to no longer negotiate with the Freedom Convoy come from? My suspicion is it came from the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, because we saw Justin Trudeau on TV every day prioritizing the Freedom Convoy like this was the ultimate thing facing Canada. And he said regularly he was coordinating with relevant law enforcement agencies to do everything he could to bring this occupation, his word, to an end and end what he called the siege of Canada's capital city. So if that's true, and even if it wasn't true to himself or someone below there, what the result is, as you put it, that the police officers could not negotiate that repositioning of vehicles to reduce that impact, that footprint of motorists on this city, is that negative impacts to Ottawa residents as a function of the demonstration were exacerbated by the government's decisions, by the government's rescinding of discretion afforded to police officers to do what they could with their best judgment to consolidate the Freedom Convoy's presence and again just mitigate negative outcomes, negative impacts to the city. Anyways, Adam, thank you. Do you want to add something to that?
Sure. Yeah. So the other thing there, like to your point, is that there was sort of a good faith negotiation that seemed to be ongoing between PLT officers and Chris Barber. Once that deal expired yesterday came out, I mean, from what I took from that, it left a bad taste in the protesters' mouths. They were looking to comply, as they had been, as we've seen in the testimony of these two officers. They were looking to continue their compliance and were only prevented from that from further complying due to the actions of the PLT.
If you folks are benefiting and enjoying our in-the-field reporting of this trial, please understand that we need your financial support to continue these operations. To do so, to contribute, and to stay up to date with our ongoing reports, please visit tamaratrial.com.